Hey, everybody. I am glad you're with me today on this episode of Game Day Birds Not Balls. I have a very special guest with me today. I love interviewing people. I really, really do. And so it's always exciting to me when I get to converse with others and I'm not just talking to myself and the wall and the mic and the people out in the whatever abyss. I like it when there's actually a conversation. So I'm excited to have Katelyn Fusco with me. She is a podcast host as well, Happy Homebirth Podcast. So I'm sure you can guess what we'll be talking about today. And we're going to be talking about home births. I have mentioned in the past that people have options. I think a lot of people are having their babies in the hospitals, of course. That's the primary way, at least here in Waco, Texas, that people are having their babies. But there are plenty of other options of places that you can have your baby. And so one option is having your baby at home, which is a very different and unique experience. And Katelyn and I are going to jump right into that. But first, I want her to introduce herself. And girl, tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, Micah, thank you so much for having me. It is always fun to be on the other end of the interview sometimes. So it's great, great to have this opportunity. Like Micah said, my name is Katelyn Fusco. I'm the host of the Happy Homebirth Podcast. I'm married to a super hunky, handsome husband and have two adorable home birth babies. And when I say babies, I mean a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old.
There you go.
They'll always be my baby. And yeah, so my journey with this topic really started years ago. Before I had my first daughter, I was introduced kind of by luck to, I mean, I think it was divine, but by luck to this midwife, and started talking to her more. She allowed me to come to some prenatals and then allowed me to attend a home birth, and just I'd seen birth before in the hospital, and it's just, I mean, birth is beautiful. You know, it's just, no matter how it happens, it's just so beautiful.
Absolutely.
But for me, there was something just so intimate and special about this particular home birth. The mom was, you know, on all fours on her bed, her 2-year-old up by her head, right with her. And it was so impactful. I was standing in the corner crying, like absolutely no help, but just really taking it all in. And that really changed me. It changed the trajectory of my life. I began working as an apprentice with that midwife, and not too far into my apprenticeship, I did become pregnant with my first.
Okay.
And that was really cool because I got to experience both aspects, you know, like I was working, helping as a care provider and also being cared for under a midwife, and learned so much about pregnancy through, you know, there's like knowledge and then there's the experience.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Had my first birth at home. And then once my daughter hit toddlerhood, it once again, everything just aligned so nicely because I was struggling going on call, and my midwife ended up moving far across the country. So I was like, you know, I think it's time for me to just be home with my daughter for now. So I focused on that. And then it was about a year and a half later that I thought, I really miss birth, number one. Number two, one thing that I've realized is there are just not a lot of resources for home birth mothers.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you know, it's such a small percentage of us
that
are doing it. So there just weren't a lot of resources. And I thought, well, what could I do to help other moms and encourage them and help them not feel so isolated? So I created the Happy Homebirth Podcast. And then I was actually pregnant with my second right when I started it. And while I was listening to these interviews of other moms, I was learning so much more about birth, despite the fact that I'd, you know, witnessed dozens and dozens of home births. Still hearing births from different areas, different types of mothers. I just learned so much. And I actually thought, well, you know, I think I could be more present in my second birth. I think I can enjoy this even more.
Yeah.
So I kind of created some techniques and practiced them on myself. And oh my goodness, my second birth is as incredible and as just transformative as my first birth was. My second birth, there was just this peace to it. And that was so empowering to realize, you know, this isn't happening to me. I am a part of this. So then I created Happy Homebirth Academy, which is my childbirth education program
Mm-hmm.
from that experience. And since then, that's just what I'm living and breathing is the caring for moms, providing positive encouragement and education and support, specifically for home birth mothers. But
Yeah.
I know that a lot of other moms that listen are having births in hospitals and birth centers. But just hearing mom stories, I mean, how it never gets old, right?
Absolutely. Oh, I totally agree with that. A lot of people don't know this, but of my 6 children, my first 5 were actually home births. A lot of people don't know that. And so I share with you, again, just that very first experience of attending. My very first birth I ever attended was actually a home birth. It was my sister's birth. I go into detail about that in my book. I'm not going to go into detail about that today, but just the atmosphere, the women that were in attendance at her birth, like it was like a couple friends, my sister and I, the midwife, her assistants, and I mean it was just like I say in the book, it felt like a sorority house. It was like women are everywhere. They're eating, they're talking, they're lounging, they're resting, they're, preparing my sister. There's conversation. I mean, it was it was amazing, but absolutely not what I would have thought in terms of childbirth. You know what I mean? Like that felt like so weighty and so heavy. And this was far from it. It was lighthearted and just normal life. I think that actually really did set the tone for me. Is that kind of what you would say about most of the births that either your own births or that you've attended, just in terms of that relaxed, peaceful, y'all were just having a baby. Like there's nothing wrong. We're just having a baby. Is that your experience too?
Definitely. And I think what's so neat about birth is that every single one is so different. And,
Mm-hmm.
there are those births where it's like it is that kind of party atmosphere almost. And then there are the quiet, just mom and her husband and the midwife, just really intimate. And they're short and fast, all of the different variations of normal, of labor. And I always like to think that, we can't choose our labor. We can't choose how it unfolds, but the lessons that we learn there, they're meant for us. They really take us into motherhood, whether it's for the first, 5th, 15th time, with that new lesson that we need to start it again, to add to our family.
Yeah. So I don't know if you feel the same way that I do about this. So sometimes I'll get, the very basic question, hey, Micah, what is a doula? What do you do? And so sometimes that trips me up because I know it's ingrained in me and it's like, this is so basic. Like, how do I answer this question to the degree that they're looking for? So I'm going to throw it at you. If somebody were to say, Katelyn, what is a home birth? What would you say? How would you answer that question?
Well, I like to think of home birth as really the normal option. Like, now we don't consider it that. It's the assumption is a mom is going to go have her birth at the hospital. Sure. And which is great, for so many people, that's the most comfortable setting. But one thing that I've kind of talked to some other women about as well, and it's that really the first intervention is leaving your home. So the norm, when we think of humanity, we think of what has gotten us to this point. Up until 100 years ago, or a little over 100 years ago, we were just having our babies at home.
Right.
Now, granted, there has been some amazing improvements in medicine and in quality in infant and maternal mortality rates. For sure. Some things have improved, and it's so amazing because there are emergencies sometimes, and praise God for the hospital.
Absolutely.
But one thing that has changed with that is that it has, on a grand scheme, kind of turned something from a physiological normal event into a medical event. And so I think when I think of home birth, I think that, it's just the basics. That is at birth. It's left alone. It's untouched. And it's the mother really tapping into that intrinsic feminine wisdom that we have carried for generations. Your body knows how to birth your baby. more than 9 times out of 10, your body is going to work correctly with your baby and function properly. And what we need to do is sit on our hands, as care providers, as doulas, midwives, all these things. It's just to be there for that mom. Like you said, there were women around your sister. It was just, they were just there. There was a community around her. And that's really what a mom needs, is to not feel alone, to feel supported. But that doesn't mean we have to take away from her experience. We don't have to save her from her experience.
Sure.
Now, the good news is that having a midwife does mean that we have a medical professional with us, or someone with some type of training. Obviously, there are all kinds of different types of midwives. You've got nurse midwives who have trained, very in-depth medically, certified professional midwives, the same, very trained. Then there's, different types of birth keepers whose range of training may vary, and you, of course, have to choose what works best for you. But yeah, just the idea that really this home birth it's just birth. It's just birth, untouched. And then, having a care provider who can be there and help you decide if, maybe we should change something. Maybe you should change positions. Maybe now we're experiencing a few red flags that would tell us it would make more sense to transfer to the hospital. Things like that. But it's kind of like the baseline. Let's start here. And really, isn't that what we do with the hospital too? Usually you start labor at home. You go through early, some active, and what does the hospital say? Like, stay home as long as you can. This is just like that, only you don't leave.
Right. It's like they come to you.
Right.
Doctors used to do house calls.
They did.
Yeah. I think that when a woman is trying to decide how she wants to give birth, where she wants to give birth, what kind of birth she wants, if you are considering a home birth, your preparation for that birth is pretty different than your preparation for a hospital birth on many different levels. There's just the physical, normal, hands-on, tangible things like, what you would pack for an overnight stay somewhere, right? Because you're leaving your home, or how to prepare for triage because you're going to go through triage, how to prepare for, the hep block or the IV, all those kinds of things. Really what I'm referring to, I'm not really referring to that in terms of preparation. I'm more referring to mental preparation, because your experience is going to be so different. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think that one thing that you recognize when you're going into a home birth is there is not going to be readily available pain medication.
Right.
The epidural is not going to happen at home. So if that's what you are planning to use in the hospital, then there you go. That's your toolkit. But when we're at home, and I will say, even if you're planning to give birth in the hospital, even if you're planning to have an epidural, I would highly recommend adding some other tools in your toolkit, because epidurals don't always work the way we think they're going to work, But at home, we don't have that option.
Right.
So what does that mean for us? Does that mean that, you are destined to writhe in pain for hours until this baby comes? No. If that were the case, then probably people wouldn't, you think of like these families from just a few generations ago. We weren't having 2 kids. They were having 10, 15, 16, 18, so many kids. Probably wouldn't be having that many kids if it were like the most painful thing ever. So what did they know? What did they do? And so we have to realize that so much of our experience of pain comes from our mindset, comes from our perception. Are we expecting to experience pain? If you're expecting to, then I can give you a thumbs up. Yeah, you're going to feel it. But if you go into this with an open mind of, is it going to be painful? Am I convinced it's going to be painful? What if it isn't? What if it's different? What if it's pressure? That, as silly as it may sound, as just like basic as it may sound, is a huge mental shift.
Right.
And then when we learn that we don't want to fight our body, our body it's all of the hormones are in this delicate, intricate dance. And when we tense up and
Right.
fight, that totally throws off what our body is trying to accomplish. So when we learn to
Absolutely.
work with our body by relaxing,
Mm-hmm.
we realize that, oh, this actually, it's not painful when I relax. If I give in to this feeling, it's part of me. I can ride this as opposed to like I'm being pummeled on the rocks with this.
Right.
It comes back to that fear, tension, pain cycle. So we're scared, we tense up, and we feel pain, and then we feel
Right.
pain, so we're scared,
Yep.
so then we tense up more, and you just have to figure out, okay, how can I get off of this awful carousel
Mm-hmm.
and get onto a more appropriate relaxation, happiness, contentment, how do I get onto that carousel? So we can learn all of these different techniques, and like I said, mindset and relaxation, really learning to deeply relax
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
the key.
Oh, totally. Totally. I did a whole episode on it. Like,
Oh,
the
nice.
name of the game is relaxation. Like, no
Mm,
matter how you're going to have your baby, whether you have a doula or not, no matter if you want to go 100% natural or not, it doesn't matter. The name of the game is relaxing. And
yeah.
if you cannot relax, if you haven't prepared in such a way to know, like you said, what some of your tools are to help you relax, yeah, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
You
It's
probably
not
are going to
something
be
you want
one
to
of
be.
those people that says, that's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. And it's not something you want to be like practicing in labor. Like,
Right.
let's take some time beforehand to really understand these skills and like, okay, what does it feel like to tense my body up? Okay, now what does it feel like to totally
Mm-hmm.
relax from the tip of my head all the way down to my toes, and like searching out, like, is my shoulder tense? Oh, is there any tension over here?
Mm-hmm.
Really searching for that tension to help soften and melt. And yeah, and then of course there are other tools like hiring a doula to help you with counter
Mm-hmm.
pressure, like using a rebozo, or getting in the water. All of
Yeah.
the midwife's epidural is what it's called.
Yep.
So many tools, but really I think that just all of the external stuff is wonderful, but it's the internal that does
Mm-hmm.
the most for us.
For sure. For sure. Now, you may have already answered this, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. What do you think the biggest misconception about home births are
Mm.
or
Yeah, I
is?
would say that it's safety for sure.
Mm.
That home birth is dangerous. It's unsafe, and if you have a home birth, then you are probably going to die, and your baby's going to die. Everyone's just going to die. And if we are hiring a midwife that we have validated, we know for sure, like, okay, she knows her stuff. I'm comfortable. I'm confident with her. She's trained. She's experienced. She's knowledgeable. I trust her. So if we're hiring a midwife, well, she is a medical professional. She's a trained medical professional. It's not like we're just like winging it, and it's not like a witch is
Right.
coming down the mountains barefoot and smelling like sage. Like, this is this is a
Tambourine
legitimate.
by the river. That's all people can picture.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely part of it, is understanding, like, okay, you're not working with like some crazy person. This is a legitimate profession.
Yeah.
And then of course that midwife brings so much equipment with her, life-saving equipment,
Mm-hmm.
oxygen, mask. She's checking your vitals. She's able to check your baby's vitals, a Doppler to check the heartbeat, all kinds of medication for if there were to be a postpartum hemorrhage. So it's not like, oh, something emergent happens and then all hell breaks loose. It's like,
Right.
no, she's trained in life-saving protocols. Um, so yeah, there's just so much safety built into it that if we don't know about it, if we're just thinking like, oh, home birth, like, oh, well, that sounds dangerous,
Yeah.
you kind of miss all of that.
And I think it's important to, because we've got listeners all over the country, just like you do. I mean, you need to do your research. You need to look
Definitely.
into who those midwives or caregivers are that are offering home birth situations. And listen, if you are not 100% trusting of this person to take care of you and your baby's life, then I'm going to say don't do it.
Yeah,
So do your
true.
research, do
Yeah,
your homework in your area for sure.
definitely. And I will say, I actually recently polled my followers, and I was surprised to see. I thought maybe, like, I guess maybe a fourth of moms have had an experience where they, there's either not a lot of midwives in their area or there aren't good midwifery options. I just wanted to see kind of gauge, and it was almost 50%. So that tells us
Wow.
that, a lot of moms do not have access to what I'm talking about.
Right.
In a safe way. Now, so then I recently did a podcast episode on that, on what do I do when I don't have good midwifery options. I think it's episode 159. But, you still have choices. That doesn't mean like, oh, well, now I'm just left high and dry, because once again, this comes back to our mindset and our perspective. And we have to recognize that wherever we choose to give birth, if we choose to give birth at the hospital or at home or in a car, wherever it is, we are the responsible party. This is our birth and our responsibility. And so sometimes I think that the issue can be that when we go to the hospital, it's kind of easier to pass off that responsibility and say like, okay, well, you're the professional, you take care of me.
Yeah.
I'll let you do this. But nobody, not even the most well-trained doctor, is going to have the same amount of interest and care at heart as you do about your birth and your baby. So making sure that whatever the situation is, whoever the care provider is that you trust this person, that you are advocating for yourself and your child. I mean, it's so critical. So yes, I 100% agree. Just taking responsibility wherever it is that you choose to give birth.
Yeah. So good. So good. So last question. And again, in our conversation, you may have already covered this, but what is maybe one or two thoughts or messages that you feel, really passionate about that you would definitely want listeners to know or to hear you say about home birth?
Yeah, I think I would say that, this is the thing that is so important for you to do your research on. And I don't just mean home birth, I mean your birthing options. This is something worth taking time to look into.
Yeah.
This is, the nursery that you create for your baby. Like, you might not remember that forever. Your birth,
right.
You're going to remember. You're going to remember how you felt, how you were supported on that day. So that means that preparation needs to begin well before that, if possible. If you're 39 weeks right now and you're listening, you're like, oh crap, like I haven't done, well, start right now. If you haven't had a baby yet, then you've still got some time. But if you can prepare and plan ahead, I would really take time to do some research. You can read books about childbirth, and like Ina May's Guide to Childbirth is one that's highly recommended by a lot of people. The Business of Being Born, that documentary is so good. Listen to birth stories. I mean, the Happy Homebirth Podcast has a great little list of birth stories. But take the time to really think about what this experience is going to be like and what you want out of it. And then go from there. Then find your care provider and the place you want to give birth based off of what it is that you want from this experience. And then, once again, just reiterating that you, as the mother, you are an intuitive being. You know your baby. You know your body. So trust and you need to be upfront with these people that you're working with and really have shared decision making, really work together as a team for the best results for everybody.
Yeah. Super important. Really, really good stuff. Why don't you let everybody know before we sign off how they can find you, how they can get connected to you? Yeah. Give us the spiel. The spiel.
Awesome.
That's a hard word to say.
Perfect.
The spiel.
Yeah, the spiel.
Yeah.
The spiel. So I am pretty active on Instagram. So Happy Homebirth Podcast is the Instagram handle. You can reach me at my website, myhappyhomebirth.com. And the podcast is on all the main podcasting hosting sites, Happy Homebirth. And yeah, I think that's it. That's the stuff. If you're interested in a home birth, you're looking for home birth education, definitely check out Happy Homebirth Academy, which you can find the information for on the website, as well as the Homebirth Collective, which is a new group intensive that I am going to be beginning in the coming months.
Oh, fabulous. I mean, yeah, you're so right that there's just not a lot of information and preparation and, people talking about it. And so I think what you've got going is just absolutely brilliant to cater to and serve these families that are looking into and want to go a different route off the beaten path a little bit compared to the rest of the country. And I think that that's great. And I would encourage anybody to look into what Katelyn's offering and what she's got, especially if you're considering this. Yes, be well prepared, educated, research, and you need to familiarize yourself with just birth in general. The more, like you said, the more stories you're reading, the more podcasts you're listening to, the more people that you talk to and familiarize yourself with just birth, the more normal it's going to feel, which is kind of my soapbox. Hey, birth is normal. We don't have to scare people about birth anymore. Do we need to talk about, some of the issues? Yes. Do we need to know that there can be trauma and process that? Absolutely. Very, very important. But for most of us, it should be normal, a normal life experience.
And the more normal we treat it, I think the less trauma we'll have.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of think that too. Yeah. For sure. Katelyn, thank you so much for being with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And I've enjoyed this conversation so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Micah.
You're welcome. All right, my friend. I have a standing closing that's already planned. And so we'll just attach that to the end of it. And anything that you can think of off the top of your head, they're like, hey, girl, go back and listen to this. And, we might have to change that or whatever. I'm not thinking of anything particular right off the top of my head. I do go back and re-listen to all of it. But
yeah, I can't think of anything. But yeah, if there's any part where you're like, oh, no, then just, obviously you do what you need to do.
Yeah. And I think I talked to you about this when we first had our phone conversation that we happen to be one of those places where there's not a lot of really great home birth options, unfortunately. But yeah, it is. And so, but having said that, I mean, I am a person that is supportive of any birth. And so it's important to me that in my book and on my podcast, that is represented, even if in my small community, it's not the best. So I'll go back and listen. And if I feel, but most of my listeners are local. If I feel like anything that was said, that I was like, okay. Cause there's a little bit of tension right now with, the medical profession and then some of the midwives that are not practicing well. And there's been some incidents and it's kind of messy, unfortunately, right now. So I'll let you know if I ended up having to pull something out unless you just don't care. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, well, your audience.
Yeah.
So definitely what you think is great.
Well, and I'm excited about anybody that was listening that does want to get more information. And, hopefully if they are in my local area, they will, reach out to you to get more information, but then reach out to me. Hey, what are our options here? Then maybe I can help steer them in the right direction. Because there are some. There's just not a lot.
Yeah. No, I totally get that.
All right, girl. Well, have a good day and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, too.
Micah.
Bye, Katelyn.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining me on Game Day Births Not Balls. You can follow me on my Instagram page at MyDoulaMicah. You can also find me on WacoDoula.com. Waco Doula is on Facebook. And if you like what you heard, you can subscribe or you can find us on RogueMediaNetwork.com. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.